Hi, welcome back to the channel. I'm Michelle, and today I'm going to be talking about homeschool doubts. And what I mean by homeschool doubts is those times in your homeschooling journey where you doubt your decision to homeschool. Those moments where you think, oh my God, did I make a mistake? Am I screwing up my child? Those are the moments I want to talk about because I think they're important. I feel like social media gives us the idea that once you make the decision to homeschool, then that's it. Everything will work out. Just have the faith through it all. And it's not always that easy. There are moments throughout your entire homeschooling journey, I imagine, where you will have those moments of, did I make a mistake? And that's completely normal. I want to normalize that and not give you this picture perfect idea that homeschooling is always perfect, because it's not. There are times you're going to doubt yourself, your decision, all those things. So I wanted to specifically talk about this because I've recently had some of those thoughts. So if you're new here, I have 3 children. I have a 10-year-old, a 6-year-old, and a 3-year-old. This is our 3rd year, going into our 3rd year homeschooling, and I will be homeschooling all of them this year. My youngest will be doing preschool, middle child 1st, 2nd grade work, oldest child 5th grade work. And I will say making the decision to homeschool wasn't easy. I do have a video, I'll link it above, kind of how we came to that decision. But my oldest was in public school K through 2nd grade. So we pulled her for her 3rd grade year and have continued to homeschool her since. And that was not an easy decision. I researched, I talked to other homeschoolers. I made an educated choice before diving into it. So I felt confident in that choice, but also scared in that choice. I think whenever we do something outside the normal box of society, such as homeschooling, it can be a little daunting, it can be a little scary, and that's completely normal to have those jitters. Now, the 1st year of homeschooling, I would say I had the most doubts. And that's, because it's new to me. Now, I did always supplement my oldest daughter's education at home in the summer. We would do some type of homeschooling, but it was never full-time. I'm never responsible for every single thing she learned. So to me, it was a lot of weight. I do take education very seriously. I have a video, I'll link up above, the value I see in education and why I take it so seriously. So this was something that was really important to me, and I wanted to make sure I did the best job possible that I could. So that 1st year, I had those doubts a lot because I was new to it. It was new territory. On top of that, there were some life changes that happened very early on. My mother actually passed away unexpectedly in the first few months of our homeschooling journey. So that threw a wrench into our entire year and made me really question if I could do this given my emotional state, dealing with grief and all that stuff. And I did get through it and was capable of homeschooling at the time, yes. But I had those moments where, was I enough? Was I doing enough? Was I present enough with dealing with my own grief? Those situations, completely normal to have those doubts. So this past year homeschooling, I didn't really have those doubts. I was confident in the choices. I had grown in the educator. I knew how best to teach to my children. My children knew their expectations. Going in, we all had a really good idea of what the year was going to look like, and it worked really well. I didn't have those doubts, but that doesn't mean they don't happen. So this past summer, and actually in the last 2 weeks of summer, at least our summer homeschool, we started the new school year beginning of August, the last 2 weeks of July. I had those doubts with both of my older children, my 10-year-old and my 6-year-old, and I want to talk about that. So with my 10-year-old, she has, from the public school, she had a lot of math anxiety and a lot of gaps in math, which I did not realize until I brought her home and had her going through some stuff and realizing there's a lot of foundational stuff she was missing and didn't understand. She was very taught route learning, just repetitive, repeat it, not understand it type of stuff. So we spent that 1st year homeschooling, her 3rd grade year, really working on conceptual math, really working on her self-confidence when it came to math, because she's a natural perfectionist, and when she doesn't get something right, she internalizes it. She sees it as a reflection of herself. So we really had to work that 3rd grade year on growth mindset, that mistakes aren't failures but opportunities to learn. So we spent the entire year really working on this, and it helped a lot. her confidence grew, her math. She used to not want to do it without me sitting right there, and she got to the point where she could do it, a portion of it independently after our lesson. So we used Singapore Dimensions, did an awesome job teaching conceptual math. She really understood things opposed to just finding the answer. So we made all these great strides in math. And then 2 weeks ago, she kind of had a meltdown over math. So she was doing a review. So with Dimensions, there's a textbook, a workbook, and a test booklet. I have her do the test booklet independently. I don't help her with that because I want to see what she actually knows. And it's actual proof of what she's capable of doing. So we were doing a review section. So we just finished a chapter and she was doing a cumulative review. So multiple chapters covering different things. So she was going through and she was doing well. Fractions she got down, multiplication, all the things we had learned she was doing well with. But she hit a problem involving division. And for whatever reason, she had forgot how to do long division. And she kind of melted down over it. Like, went back to that same mindset that I don't get this, internalized it as a failure upon herself, and what does that mean about her, all those things. And it came out of nowhere, really did, because I felt like we had tackled this issue so many times in that third grade year. I didn't know why suddenly this was earth-shattering. So I pulled her aside. I showed her a long division problem. And once we worked through it, she remembered and it clicked and she could go forward. But there was like a 45-minute meltdown over it. And it was a lot of emotions, and it really caught me off guard because I thought we had done so much work with growth mindset, so much work with math, that she would have the coping skills to be able to realize, okay, I can't do this. Let me figure out a way, or let me ask for help. And that's not what happened. And in that moment, I was like, what did we do this year? What did we do this year? Because she had struggled learning long division last year, and we had gone through it. We had reached a point where she understood it and could do it. And there were times she did it intermittently through Dimensions, so it wasn't like we haven't touched the subject in months. But it was just this rare opportunity where she forgot. And part of me is like, well, am I supposed to be having her do division worksheets every day to keep it fresh? Because we did that with multiplication, where we did multiplication kind of like drills where she'd fill out the paper every day just to keep those multiplication facts fresh. And I was like, did I make a mistake not doing that? Did she not really understand that I thought she understood? Did we not make as much progress in the growth mindset that I thought we did? So I had all of a sudden doubts of this great year we had. Was it really that great? Was I looking at it as rose-colored glasses and only focusing on the positive? And then, again, after a day, I settled down after those thoughts. And I think it's important to let those thoughts happen. Let those feelings happen. Let those doubt, fear, like pushing them away and saying, okay, well, whatever, no, this is a decision I made, I'm pushing through it. Let yourself feel those things because they are important, and sometimes they are telling you things that you need to work on or pay attention to or miss. So those are important things, not meant to be ignored. But I think so many people avoid feeling uncomfortable in situations or feeling negative or bad feelings. They're emotions too that are important. So living in those emotions, I think, are important. So again, the next day, things look different, as they often do. So I had a conversation with her. And lo and behold, a couple days after that, I came upon an article. So there's an organization called SEA, which is Secular Eclectic Academic. They have a Facebook site that you can join as well. I'll link it down below for you. But obviously it focuses on secular, academically rigorous resources and things like that. So they have a magazine newsletter that they send out, and I opened it up and I read it, and there was a whole section on middle school, teaching or homeschooling during the middle school years and the difficulties and struggles and tips for that. And lo and behold, while reading this article, they talk about how it's common for cognitive regression to happen. that your child during this time period is growing so immensely, physically, emotionally, their brain, everything is growing a lot. And it's common for regression to happen academically or with what they learn. And it clicked with me. I was like, that's what's going on. And I know that's what's going on because my child has been eating everything in sight. She's physically grown, I know that. So it clicked with me in that moment that it had nothing to do with the curriculum. It had nothing to do with me or my teaching. It had nothing to do with her growth mindset or something we didn't do. It was just something physically happening with her where it just got a little muddled in her head because so much is going on and changing. And I think it's so important to look at the why of why something isn't working. I could have easily said, oh, she clearly didn't understand division. It was the curriculum. I need to switch. No, that's not always the answer. Yes, are there times you have to switch your curriculum? Yes, completely believe that. But don't be so quick to think it's the curriculum, that there are other reasons behind that why. And that was the reason behind the why, that she did understand division. She did understand the concept. She did do a lot of personal growth and all that. It's just this little delay that was happening in her brain and the emotional aspect of that as well with the emotional changes going on during her age group. It makes sense that that would lead to a meltdown. Someone recently told me that, you see teenagers kind of like you see preschoolers. They got the same emotional capabilities, and that is a really helpful saying to remember, to understand that they're dealing with a lot emotionally, physically, and that their brain is working a ton to do all these things. It's the biggest growth they're going to have for their lives. So to keep that in mind, but that was the why, and realizing that had nothing to do with all the things I was worrying about, curriculum, my teaching, growth, all those things. It was just this one thing that was happening. So again, I doubted myself. Completely normal, completely okay, but realizing what was the reason behind it. So that was my experience with doubting myself, like, oh my God, for my 10-year-old. Now my 6-year-old was last week. And it's funny that they happen like back to back. But so we have been trying to pursue getting my 6.5-year-old evaluated for some type of neurodiversity. It's something I believe she struggles with. Specifically, I think she falls somewhere with ADHD, just on the behaviors I've noticed from her. I also worked with children prior to having kids, so I kind of know developmentally behaviors that are appropriate and things that are like, okay, that's a little outside what is typically normal developmentally. So that is something we have suspected in this house, and we've gone on a journey of trying to have that evaluated by medical professionals, which is not always easy because 1, my daughter's young, 2, she's female, and it's harder to get females diagnosed or get evaluated because they are usually better at masking or hiding the typical traits, or they present differently than a typical ADHD male child would. So, long story short, we had her evaluated by a medical professional, and we filled out all the questionnaires and all the paperwork that they wanted on our end, and I got a call from the doctor. And the doctor said she scored very highly on her testing, and she is most likely dealing with ADHD or having ADHD. And this was not a surprise to me in any means. This is something that's been on my radar for a while. I remember when she was, if you're new here, she has celiac disease. When she was diagnosed with celiac disease at 3.5 years, I remember reading with all the information I was given for celiac disease that there tends to be a higher rate of ADHD seen in celiac children. And it could just be a correlation. It doesn't necessarily mean because you have celiac disease you will have ADHD, or because you have ADHD you have celiac disease. Again, it's a correlation, not necessarily one leads to the other. But it was something always in the back of my head to be on the lookout for, because again, I've worked with children, I know what to look for. And when I received the phone call, again, this is something I had suspected for a while, hence why I had pushed the evaluations, but it's still, there was a moment of sadness. And it was longer than a moment, it was like a day of sadness. Not because I think there's anything wrong with ADHD, or you can't, have a fulfilling life when you're neurodiverse. I think it's the complete opposite. I see it as, a wonderful opportunity. But at that time, it's like the doctor's telling you, hey, just so you know, your child's gonna have a little bit rougher time with life. And that was the part that made me sad. And the part that made me doubt myself is, I knew if she was in the public school setting, based on my daughter's experience in the public school setting, based on the fact that I know public school teachers in my area, that if she had a diagnosis, that she would receive special accommodations at school, which is funny because she wouldn't have really received many for her celiac disease diagnosis. But one of the things my 6-year-old struggles with is reading, specifically being able to focus enough to read. And she told me last week as well that because she was getting really frustrated, keep losing her place. We do have different things for her to keep her place, so that's not the issue. She would tell me that when she was reading a word, sometimes she would, images or thoughts would come in her brain that had nothing to do with what she was reading. She would just remember that, and then she would think about that, and then she would look over there and think of that. That she was telling me she had the really hard time focusing. She forgot she was in the middle of reading because her brain was somewhere else. Again, very, I would say, typical of what you would see in ADHD. But she was able to verbalize that, which I was really proud of. But I knew if she was in the public school setting, she'd be seeing a reading specialist. She would be seeing someone to help her with this. And there are schools that have behavioral therapist, occupational therapy that is done through the school. Now, can I do those things through our home? Yes. So we were referred to a behavioral therapist to kind of give us strategies to help her with, and some one-on-one things she can do, and we're setting those appointments up now. But the point is, it's now out of pocket for me. My insurance isn't, I mean, we have a deductible and all those things, but it's going to be out of pocket. If it was through the school system, it would be something that was funded. So, I mean, that is something to say that, and can we afford it? Yes, but it is a financial area that I'll have to consider. And I think that's something that needs to be considered, because there are a lot of services, not just education, but a lot of services that come through the public school. And I was thinking, well, God, if she was in public school, would she be having better services, people better equipped to handle what she's dealing with? Because I am not neurodiverse. I am very type A, organized, structured, and very neurotypical. And I don't personally understand how her brain works. So my next step, of course, is educating myself, researching ADHD strategies, talking to the behavioral therapist, learning more about it so I'm better prepared. But at that instant, I felt unprepared. I felt like there was better people equipped to help her educationally, because there are areas she's going to struggle in more because of this diagnosis that I'm not prepared to teach, that there are people who specialize in this that can teach that. So I had that doubt. And of course, with her celiac disease, the public school setting would not be a great setting for her, given that they would not make accommodations for her dietary restrictions or cross-contamination. So I have that in my mind, but educationally I'm thinking, could they do it better? And it's okay, again, to say with that sadness that again, it's nothing negative against my daughter or anything wrong with her, but that society doesn't tend to bend for the exceptional or the ones that are different. It tends to ostracize them. And we've experienced that so much with her celiac disease, the fact that she's often has to do different things than her peers because she can't eat certain things or she can't be around certain art supplies. So for example, we bought clay to do pottery and the clay had wheat in it. Why clay has to have wheat in it, I don't understand, but she can't use that. Is she physically eating it? No, but everything she touches would have gluten on it. So again, it's a whole issue in itself. It's a whole issue we've been dealing with since she's 3. So to get this additional hit that, oh, by the way, on top of dealing with all this, she's now going to have to figure out how to work in a neurotypical world to be able to accommodate and adapt to a neurotypical world. And that's just sad. Sad that the world can't adapt to her, and I think it will with time, and that's something I want to definitely teach my children about, being world changers and going out there and being the change in the world. But it was sad. It was sad that this is just another thing that she has to deal with. And it made me question my decision to put her education in there, because now I have to take it upon myself to educate myself and figure out the best way to help her. And I think I will ultimately turn out to be the best choice for that, because I have the patience and I'm obviously very invested in my child's future and education, so I'll make the effort. But for that day, I did question, I did think, oh God, did I make a mistake? Would she be better off in a public school setting or a private school setting? It doesn't have to be public school, but I know public schools do have services for those areas. But those are the two most recent in this past year that I was like, did I make a mistake? Am I doing the right thing? Those are completely normal thoughts to happen, especially when you get hit with certain life-changing events, certain diagnoses. It's completely normal, and I feel like we should normalize the doubts that I might come on this channel and look really confident about my choices and my curriculum, and I am. I make educated choices, I research, I do the best I can, so I'm confident in the choices I make. But that doesn't mean I don't ever question myself or the choices I make or the curriculum I use. That's completely normal. That's just part of being a parent. No matter what you're going to do, you're going to question the things you do. That doesn't mean you're a bad parent, doesn't mean you're a bad educator or homeschooler. It just means you care about your child, and being able to understand and accept those feelings and work through those feelings, I think, is really important, and really get behind the why of those feelings instead of just switching or putting kids into different learning environments. There's different solutions to different problems, right? But that's what I want to talk about. I want to talk about the doubts, and it's okay to have doubts, and you're going to have doubts throughout your entire journey. And ultimately, I don't think a lot of us will know what the end of the journey looks like. So if you have any questions, leave them down below. Thank you for watching.